So there's that. You know, the branches of the American military all have a very specific, unique function. When you join a branch, you typically know what that branch of the military does, and you've kind of got your reasons for joining. I can tell you that for me, I didn't really know anything about the Marine Corps at all, other than the Marine Corps was, in my opinion, just the most badass branch of the military possible. And whenever I wanted to join the military, I said, if I'm going to join it, and this might be the Blackbird or the Wolf, whatever you can call it, I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this as hardcore as possible, and give it everything I have, right? I caught a lot of crap from Meemaw's brothers because they were all Army. We have one cousin, your father and I. We have one cousin that was in the Marine Corps. Our Grandpa Wolf, he was in the Navy. But basically everybody else was in the Army. Even Pawpaw's dad was in the Army. His father was in the Army. So it's a lot of Army, right? So you're kind of like, well, why would you join the Marine Corps? Well, I felt like, you know, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, right? Yeah. Now, I went in blindly to the Marine Corps. My recruiter actually even asked me, whenever I went in there, I was going to college. They had a recruiting station not far from the college I was going to. And I walked in there one day, and I walked through all the different offices they had there of all the branches, and I saw the Air Force guys sitting there, like, looked like they were almost cuddled up, staring at a computer. I was like, no. I walked over to the Navy. They were gone. I saw the Army down the hall down there, and there was nobody there. And I walked over to the Marine Corps recruiter's office, and he looked like depressed but hardcore at the same time. And so I walked in. I was like, "Hey, what's up, man?" He's like, "Hello." I was like, and I was 22 at the time. I said, "Hey, I'm joining the Marine Corps." Actually, I was 21, but I said, "I'm joining the Marine Corps." He's like, "You got warrants out for your arrest?" "No." "You got money problems?" "No." "You got, like, did you knock up a girl or something? You got a kid on the way?" "No." He goes, "Well, why do you want to join the Marine Corps?" I was like, "I mean, you guys are badasses, right?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'll join the Marine Corps." So I worked with him for a short time, and I actually, that time, I'd worked at a factory all summer long and realized I did not want, that was not my future. I didn't want that for myself. I dropped a bunch of weight because I'd gotten fat after high school, like really fat. I was like 330 pounds fat, you know what I mean? And I worked in that factory and dropped like 50 pounds in a summer because it was just hot every day and it sucked. And so I was like 275, something like that. And the recruiter said, "Well, you're going to have to lose a lot of weight if you want to join the Marine Corps." I was like, "Well, give me a number." So he gave me a number. He said I had to weigh 207 pounds. I went back to that recruiter 2.5 months later, and I weighed 212 pounds. And I said, "Let's go. Let's do this." And so he brought me in on a waiver, and I went to the Marine Corps boot camp. But how I joined the Marine Corps, all the branches have a very specific purpose. I ended up in war because I was in the Marine Corps, and more specifically because I was in the infantry. I did not necessarily choose the infantry, so short story, I actually graduated my schooling in top 5 in my class. The incentive for graduating high in your class is that they put a whole bunch of units that you can go to in the Marine Corps on a board. And if you are the number 1, then you get first pick. Number 2 gets second pick. Number 3 gets third pick, so on and so forth. And we had about 60 people. I graduated top 5. I was actually number 4. But I knew that I was going to be marrying your Aunt Ashley because I dated her for about 3 years before joining. And I asked my instructors, I said, I'm getting married as soon as I leave here. I'm getting married before I check my unit. I said, what are my choices here? Like, can I take her with me no matter where I pick, where I want to go? I wanted to go overseas. I wanted to do all kinds of stuff. And they said, no, you can't. Your first enlistment, if you go overseas, you cannot go to another like overseas unit, your first enlistment with your wife. You can your second, third, fourth, whatever it is, but your first tour of duty, you cannot go accompanied to an overseas unit. I said, well, that sucks. I said, because I got to have that, right? So I forfeited my number 4 spot and took whatever was left over at the end to be guaranteed to have a unit in the States for Aunt Ashley. Because of that, I ended up in an infantry unit. I could have went to a really cush, really sweet, nice spot over in Europe somewhere, got to see Europe and the world, been far away from this war and everything. But instead, I said, nope, I got to marry Ashley, so I'll take the infantry. The unit that I went to is one of the 2 most decorated units in the entire Marine Corps. One of which, my unit was 2-4, the other unit is 3-5. And they're both part of 5th Marines Regiment. 5th Marines Regiment is the most decorated Marine Corps regiment in all of the Marine Corps. Basically, those are the 2 most hardcore units in the entire Marine Corps. So how did I end up in war? I ended up in war because I went to the most hardcore infantry battalion you could possibly be in the entire Marine Corps. That's just where I landed. Other people, how did they get there? Like I said, we took Navy ships and floated around the ocean, right? People join the Navy. Some of them are assigned to a ship. Some of them are not. Hold on, bud. If you're assigned to a ship, then you live on the ship. And you do whatever it is the ship's doing. You go wherever the ship's going. Rosie, stop. And so that's how the sailors end up in war. They're just assigned to a ship. When we got to Kuwait, we had Air Force there that would fly us from Kuwait over into Iraq, right? I told you they were doing those combat takeoffs and landings, right? Someone has to fly us safely from one place to another. That's how in the Air Force, you end up in war. You know, going and reinforcing an Army unit because they're also infantry. Because they're infantry, that's how you end up in war. So it really comes down to what unit you are in the military in your specific branch, and what the function of that unit is, that will determine your likelihood of being in war. Now, having said that, after I got out of the Marine Corps and I got my job on Scott Air Force Base here where I live at now, I've gotten to see a different perspective of war, not only war, but what it takes to be able to be successful in all of the branches and war, and that is all the behind the scenes of what it takes to be able to make things move. The place where I work at now, United States Transportation Command, is what's called a combatant command. There are, if I remember correctly, 8 of them in the U.S. And United States Transportation Command facilitates the movement of anything. It doesn't matter whether it's pencils, paper, pens, people, equipment, vehicles. If anything moves in any branch of the United States military, it gets processed through the place where I work at. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what branch it is. You know, so we have people that are in the military that work there. You know, so in a sense, they're still in war, even during wartime, because they're facilitating the movement of things. You have Special Operations Commands. You have the African Command in the continent of Africa. I mean, you know, there's wars going on everywhere, but it really ultimately just comes down to what unit you're in and what branch you're in. So we all end up there somehow, some way,